was simply entitled Raw. So we know Brother Sam is sometimes raw.
That's the name of the column, Detroit Raw. Michigan Citizen published it. There's our editor, there's Zenobia Jeffries. And look who isn't here. None of the mainstream media is here. And let's understand, if we run a barbershop, they'd be overflowing. Trying to figure out if we knew how to spell our own name. But you see, what is occurring here is very profound, and Congressman John Conyers, America's congressman, has seen it come generation after generation, because Detroit is ground zero for the suppression of the black vote and the rendering of urban America to a plantation. See, when I served 4 years in the military in the 60s, they used to have something called the point man. The point man would go out ahead of the regular patrol. They trained folks to do this. Now, unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to be that point man, because a lot of them only came back in boxes. But the point I'm making is that Kevyn Orr is serving as the point man for the Tea Party right-wing agenda. And that's the same group that is giving President Obama pure hell right now in the Congress of the United States. If he says up, President says up, they say down. He says to the side, they go the other way. Whatever it is, even if it benefits people, and understand that what's occurring in Detroit has national and international ramifications. And that's why, as Congressman Conyers saw many years ago, in Montgomery and other places, when he was called upon to stand side by side with Martin Luther King Jr. That's the reason we have a King holiday today, is due to this congressman. And I've got to tell you something. The reason we honor King is because he took direct action. There are enough people in here today. There were enough people a couple of Saturdays ago when we blocked off access to the federal courthouse and the United States Department of Justice. We had a flatbed truck there, a couple of thousand people there, and we were calling for justice for Trayvon. And the point I'm making is this. We are going to have to organize and set a tone ourselves that we will not have democracy trampled on in Detroit. Now, as I close, understand what I'm saying. We're going to need Congressman Conyers, just like Martin King needed him in the Deep South, because there are going to be a lot of people going to jail. Now, I can do incarceration, but I can't do injustice.
Now, while this is not to insult others who are on to speak today, and I want to thank our beloved sister from Channel 2 who did arrive. Thank you for your courage. But our congressman is a person of great agenda. And we want to respect his time, and he's been here since 4. And I want him to have remarks in lieu of our response to Mr. Kevyn Orr. Listen, let us stand and receive our chieftain, all right?
Thank you, Reverend Dr. Chapman, and all of you who are here today. You know, it's incredible that sometimes adversity brings us together and makes us think through things a little more thoroughly than we might have otherwise. And that's what's happened here, isn't it? Yes. That's what's happening. We realize the great history of Detroit. And I was just thinking of how when I was endorsed by Dr. King, when Adam Clayton Powell came to C.L. Franklin's church on Linwood to help me win by my first election ever, 128 votes I won by. Wow. And now I come to you as the Dean of the Congressional Black Caucus. What an honor. The youth liberty and what a responsibility. I was elected as the 7th African-American member of Congress since Reconstruction. And now, in the Congressional Black Caucus, we have a total of 43 members. and growing. So what I am going to do is this. I want a delegation to join with me and go to the President of the United States of America and put this before him, and not for special aid or assistance, but to make sure that he understands in his second term. You know, he wasn't supposed to win a second term. Remember that? They were all saying, we don't know if he can win or not. It looks pretty cloudy. And he won big in the popular vote and the electoral vote as well. And what we want to do is, besides sharing this with this great President of the United States, is to go through every federal program. I don't know if Detroit has done this yet, but I'm going to do it. And what we are going to do is make sure that we are eligible. We don't want any special favors, because guess what? There are a lot of cities in the same shape that we are.
That's right.
The problem is that we are the largest of them all. And so our problem is magnified. And the one thing I am very disappointed about with this emergency manager, Orr, is that he was negotiating, and then all of a sudden he took time out and went and filed us into bankruptcy. While he was in the midst of negotiations. They were shocked. And then there's another thing that I could mention here. He refuses to meet with union representatives in the labor town that created the middle class here and in America. It makes no sense. And as has been said, this is not just a Detroit issue, it's a national issue. And so the struggle for justice continues. And as long as I am in the Congress, as the second most senior person in that body, you can count on me to be at these meetings. We want to get a group together, and we're going to Washington and make this a national issue, because it is a national issue. God bless you, and thank you so much.
We want to receive now the leader of the NAACP Detroit chapter, a true voice for justice. Join me in receiving the one and only and incomparable Reverend Dr. Wendell Anthony.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Again, I want to join my voice in support of Dr. Chapman for calling this press conference. And we do appreciate the fact that there are some from the media who are here. We know that this is not an issue that the media really wants to cover, because many of the media are complicit in what is going on in the city of Detroit. And so when you're complicit in something, you don't want to identify yourself and pull the wool and the cover off of yourself. That's up to the people to do that. I'm here in behalf of the Detroit branch NAACP in respect and support of my colleagues who are here, labor, faith-based leaders, preachers, and community organizations. I have a prepared statement because I want to make sure they get it right. And I want to make sure that it flows out of here so other folk can record and recall and articulate what we said here, at least what the NAACP says here. I'm not going to read it all, just a couple of excerpts from it. The remarks that Mr. Orr has said have already been identified. Mr. Orr's attempt to explain his characterization of the city of Detroit and its people is even more arrogant and callous. It is without apology, possessing no sensitivity or concern for the very people he has been selected or anointed to so-called manage. One has to wonder if these comments are also the sentiments of the man who appointed Mr. Orr. In the first place, Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, who said he accepts Mr. Orr's comments and the intent behind them, The question must be asked, how can one effectively restructure Detroit when he does not respect Detroit? How can the emergency manager effectively manage the city of Detroit and its image around the world when he tears it down, disrespects the people, and uses language couched in the appearance of concern that is really what one expects from the likes of a Rush Limbaugh or a George Will? Shame on you, Mr. Orr. Many of us have attempted to avoid name-calling and personal denigration of you and your office. We find that you have now crossed the line reflecting the historical demonization while demonstrating the most base and vile contempt for the citizens in the city of Detroit. Lest we forget, Detroit workers have built the nation's middle class. Detroiters have taxed themselves to build schools, stadiums, to hire police officers and firefighters, and to improve city services for the past 50 years. Can Mr. Orr say the same thing about his friends on Wall Street? Mr. Orr, as a so-called turnaround expert, brought in to carry the city of Detroit through this bankruptcy, and using these terms when he was working to restructure Chrysler, General Motors, or other companies, had not used the same terms. He didn't call Chrysler dumb. He didn't call New York or Pittsburgh or Miami lazy. He didn't call the other cities complacent. He didn't call them happy while they were rich. Matter of fact, you need to hear this. Y'all need to understand this. Moody's Investor Services has even downgraded the state of Illinois' credit quality. Moody's stated that Illinois services have even downgraded them, that the state of Illinois has the worst credit rating of any state in the nation. An overall pension debt of nearly $97 billion and a backlog of unpaid bills nearing $10 billion. The city of Chicago recently saw its credit rating downgraded because of a $19 billion unfunded pension liability that Moody's puts closer to $36 billion. The city of Los Angeles could also be facing a liability of more than $30 billion. Yet no one, including Mr. Orr, has referred to these cities as dumb, lazy, happy, and rich. Mr. Orr, Governor Snyder, Detroit is better than that. Our workers are better than that. Our city is better than that. Our people are better than that. We live better than that. You ought to talk better than that. You should treat folk better than that. Remember how you was raised up and how you got over. So you need to understand that as you got over, we have the same right. It is unfortunate that a man given such responsibility and unlimited power by a governor who disregarded the will of 2.3 million Michiganders by circumventing the no vote to this entire process can be so out of touch with reality. Mr. Orr just got to Detroit 5 months ago. He has no stake in the city. He has not lived in the city. He will be leaving this city in a matter of months. Mr. Snyder, who made this ill-conceived appointment, it is the governor. Let's be clear. It is Governor Rick Snyder who should be called out for this appointment. Governor, you did it. Governor, you ought to be responsible for it. Governor, you can't run and you can't hide. You did it. You ought to own up to it. It is these types of comments that make it most difficult for Detroit and this region to come together. It is tantamount to throwing gasoline on an already inflamed community. Yet I'm reminded of the very motto of the city of Detroit, which is Sperimus Meliora Resurge Ceneribus. We hope for better things. It shall rise from the ashes. Mr. Orr, we hope and we pray that through a sincere apology to the people of Detroit, which you have not given, and by stepping down from your current responsibilities, which you need to do, that the city of Detroit can once again come up from the dirt and the ashes that your callous remarks have now thrown on very honorable people.
Thank you.